The day I found out I was pregnant, my world shifted on its axis. It was a crisp autumn morning in Boston, and I remember standing in our small bathroom, staring at the 2 pink lines on the test with a mixture of disbelief and overwhelming joy. My hands trembled as I called out to my husband, Jack, who was making coffee in the kitchen. The smell of freshly ground beans wafted through our apartment as he rushed in, his eyes widening at the sight of the test in my hands. We're going to be parents," he whispered, a slow smile spreading across his face. I nodded, tears welling up in my eyes as he enveloped me in a warm embrace. In that moment, everything felt perfect, like the universe had aligned just for us. As the weeks passed and my belly began to swell ever so slightly, an idea started to take root in my mind. What if we took one last big adventure before our lives changed forever? I broached the subject with Jack one evening as we sat on our worn leather couch, the soft glow of the TV illuminating our faces. "What do you think about taking a family trip?" I asked, my voice tinged with excitement. "You know, before the baby comes and we're too busy changing diapers to even think about traveling." Jack raised an eyebrow, a mix of curiosity and concern in his eyes. "A trip? Now? Are you sure that's a good idea, Sarah?" I nodded enthusiastically, already envisioning the possibilities. "Think about it. We could go somewhere we've always wanted to visit, make some amazing memories before we become a family of 3. Over the next few weeks, our evenings were filled with animated discussions about potential destinations, poring over travel blogs, and weighing the pros and cons of each option. We finally settled on a 2-week trip to the picturesque coastal town of Newport, Rhode Island. It wasn't too far from home, but it offered the perfect blend of history, natural beauty, and relaxation. As I packed our suitcases, carefully folding each item and tucking away the prenatal vitamins I'd need, a mixture of excitement and nervousness fluttered in my stomach. This wasn't just any vacation. It felt like a pivotal moment in our lives, a celebration of the journey we were about to embark on as parents. The morning of our departure arrived with a golden sunrise that painted the Boston skyline in hues of orange and pink. We loaded our luggage into our trusty old Subaru, the car that had been with us since college and would soon be replaced by a more family-friendly model. As Jack navigated the early morning traffic, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation building within me. The drive to Newport was filled with laughter and shared memories. We reminisced about our college days, our first date at that tiny Italian restaurant in the North End, and the moment Jack proposed on the Charles River Esplanade. Each mile that passed seemed to bring us closer not just to our destination, but to the future we were racing towards. As we crossed the impressive Claiborne-Pell Newport Bridge, the town came into view, its harbor dotted with sailboats and yachts. The salty sea air filled our lungs as we rolled down the windows, and I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This was exactly what we needed, a chance to reconnect and recharge before the whirlwind of parenthood swept us up. Our first stop was the bed and breakfast we'd booked, a charming Victorian house with a view of the ocean. The innkeeper, a kind-faced woman named Martha, greeted us warmly. "Welcome to Newport, dears," she said, her eyes crinkling at the corners as she smiled. "Oh, and congratulations," she added, noticing my small baby bump. As we settled into our room, with its 4-poster bed and antique furnishings, I felt a wave of contentment. This was the beginning of our adventure, a chance to create lasting memories before our lives changed forever. The days that followed were a blur of activity and relaxation. We strolled hand in hand along the famous cliff walk, marveling at the opulent mansions that lined the path. The ocean breeze tousled my hair as we stopped to rest on a bench overlooking the crashing waves below. "Can you believe we'll be parents soon?" I asked Jack, squeezing his hand. He smiled, his eyes filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "It's incredible," he replied, placing his free hand gently on my belly. "I can't wait to bring our little one here someday, to show them where their parents took their last big adventure before becoming a family." We explored the town's rich history, taking tours of the grand Newport mansions and imagining the lavish parties that must have been held within their walls. In the evenings, we savored fresh seafood at local restaurants, indulging in lobster rolls and clam chowder that tasted like the essence of New England itself. One particularly memorable day, we decided to take a sailing lesson. As we bobbed on the gentle waves of Narragansett Bay, the instructor patiently taught us the basics of tacking and jibing. I couldn't help but laugh as Jack struggled with the ropes, his face a picture of concentration. "You know," I teased, "we might need to hold off on buying that yacht we've been dreaming about. I think we'll have our hands full with diapers and midnight feedings for a while." Jack grinned, pulling me close as the sail fluttered above us. "Maybe we can start with a rubber ducky in the bathtub and work our way up." As our trip neared its end, we found ourselves sitting on the beach, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was ablaze with colors, reds and oranges melting into purples and blues. I leaned against Jack, feeling the warmth of his body and the gentle movement of our unborn child within me. "This has been perfect," I murmured, closing my eyes and listening to the rhythmic sound of the waves. "I'm so glad we did this." Jack kissed the top of my head, his arm tightening around me. "Me too, Sarah. It's been amazing to have this time together, just the two, well, almost 3 of us." As we packed our bags on the last morning, I felt a twinge of sadness mixed with anticipation. Our adventure was coming to an end, but an even bigger one was just beginning. Martha hugged us goodbye, pressing a small gift into my hands, a handmade baby blanket in soft pastel colors. "For the little one," she said with a wink. "Come back and visit us when you're a family of 3, won't you?" The drive back to Boston was quieter than our journey to Newport, both of us lost in our thoughts and memories of the past 2 weeks. As the familiar skyline of our home city came into view, I felt a sense of readiness wash over me. We were returning changed, not just by the experiences we'd shared, but by the growing anticipation of the life-altering journey ahead. Our apartment felt different when we walked in, as if the energy had shifted. As we unpacked, placing souvenirs from our trip on shelves and tucking away clothes that smelled of sea salt, I realized that this space would soon be transformed by the arrival of our child. That night, as we lay in bed, exhausted but content, Jack placed his hand on my stomach. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" I asked, turning to face him in the darkness. "For suggesting this trip, for carrying our child, for being you," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I can't wait to meet our baby and start this new chapter with you." As I drifted off to sleep, images of our Newport adventure mingled with dreams of the future, a smiling baby, first steps, family picnics by the sea. Our craziest family trip had been more than just a vacation. It had been a bridge between our past and our future, a celebration of love and the endless possibilities that lay ahead. Little did I know that this blissful moment was the calm before a storm that would test the very foundations of our relationship and my own strength. But for now, in the quiet of our Boston apartment, with the memories of Newport still fresh and the promise of new life growing within me, everything felt right in the world. The anticipation built as our car wound its way through the bustling streets of Manhattan. Jack's mother, Eleanor, sat in the back seat, her presence a constant reminder of the unexpected twist our family trip had taken. When she had called last week, insisting on joining us for what she called quality family time before the baby arrives, I had felt a knot form in my stomach. But Jack had agreed before I could voice my concerns, and now here we were. As we pulled up to the grand entrance of the Elysian Hotel, a sense of unease crept over me. The doorman, dressed in an impeccable uniform, greeted us with a practiced smile as he opened the car door. "Welcome to the Elysian," he said, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of honking horns and bustling pedestrians. The lobby was a marvel of modern luxury, all sleek lines and polished surfaces. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings, casting a warm glow over the marble floors. As Jack checked us in, I found myself drawn to a large abstract painting on the wall, its swirls of blue and green reminding me of the peaceful days we'd spent in Newport just a few months ago. How different things felt now. "Sarah," Jack's voice pulled me from my reverie. "We're all set. Let's head up to the room." As we rode the elevator to the 20th floor, Eleanor filled the silence with a running commentary on the hotel's decor, her voice grating on my already frayed nerves. "Oh, it's nice enough, I suppose," she said, her tone implying that she'd seen better. "Though I do think the one we stayed at in Paris last year was more elegant. Don't you agree, Jack?" Jack mumbled a noncommittal response, his eyes meeting mine briefly. I saw a flicker of something, apology perhaps, before he looked away. The elevator dinged, announcing our arrival, and we made our way down the plush carpeted hallway to our suite. As Jack swiped the key card and pushed open the door, I felt my heart sink. The suite was beautiful, no doubt, a spacious living area with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of Central Park, a kitchenette gleaming with stainless steel appliances, and 2 separate bedrooms. But it was the layout that caused my spirits to plummet. The master bedroom was immediately visible, its king-sized bed a reminder of the intimacy I had hoped to share with Jack on this trip. The second bedroom, smaller but still luxurious, was clearly meant for Eleanor. "Well," Eleanor said, clapping her hands together, "this is lovely. Jack, be a dear and bring my bags to my room, won't you?" As Jack obediently picked up his mother's suitcases, I felt a surge of frustration. This was supposed to be our trip, a chance for us to connect before the baby arrived. Instead, it felt like we were back in Boston, with Eleanor dictating our every move. I made my way to the large windows, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. Below, the city pulsed with life, yellow taxis weaving through traffic, people hurrying along the sidewalks, the lush green expanse of Central Park a stark contrast to the concrete jungle surrounding it. I placed a hand on my swollen belly, feeling a flutter of movement within. "It's okay, little one," I whispered. "We'll make the best of this." "Sarah," Jack's voice startled me. I turned to find him standing awkwardly in the middle of the room, his mother nowhere in sight. "Mom's freshening up. I thought maybe we could talk about our plans for the week." I nodded, moving to sit on the plush sofa. Jack joined me, leaving a noticeable gap between us. The distance felt symbolic of the growing chasm in our relationship, one that had been widening ever since we'd announced the pregnancy to his family. "I was thinking," Jack began, his voice low, "that we could start with a visit to the Met tomorrow. Mom's always wanted to see the Egyptian collection." I felt a flash of annoyance. "What about the food tour we talked about? You know I've been craving those famous New York bagels." Jack's face fell. "Oh, right. I forgot about that. It's just, Mom isn't really into walking tours and with your condition." "My condition?" I interrupted, my voice sharper than I intended. "Jack, I'm pregnant, not invalid. The doctor said moderate exercise is good for me." He held up his hands in a placating gesture. I know. It's just, can we try to make this trip enjoyable for everyone? Mom doesn't get to travel much, and she's really excited about spending time with us before the baby comes." I bit back the retort that threatened to spill out. This was the crux of our recent arguments, Jack's inability to set boundaries with his mother, his constant prioritizing of her wishes over ours. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions brewing inside me. "Jack," I said, my voice trembling slightly, "this trip was supposed to be about us. About our family, you, me, and the baby. I understand that your mom wants to be involved, but we need time for ourselves too." Jack's expression softened, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the man I'd fallen in love with, caring, understanding, supportive. He reached out, taking my hand in his. "You're right, Sarah. I'm sorry. How about we compromise? We'll do the food tour in the morning, just the 2 of us, and then meet up with Mom for the museum in the afternoon." I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this trip could be salvaged after all. I squeezed his hand, offering a small smile. "That sounds perfect." The moment was shattered by the sound of the bedroom door opening. Eleanor emerged, her hair freshly styled and her makeup impeccable. "So," she said brightly, either oblivious to or ignoring the intimate moment she'd interrupted, "what's the plan for dinner?" "I've heard wonderful things about the restaurant downstairs." As Jack launched into a discussion about dinner options with his mother, I felt the familiar sense of being an outsider creep over me. I excused myself, retreating to the bathroom under the guise of needing to freshen up. Locking the door behind me, I leaned against it, closing my eyes and taking deep breaths. The bathroom was a marvel of marble and chrome, but in that moment, it felt like a sanctuary. I moved to the large mirror above the double sinks, studying my reflection. The woman staring back at me looked tired, her eyes betraying a mix of frustration and uncertainty. As I splashed cold water on my face, I tried to shake off the feeling of dread that had been building since we arrived. This was New York City, a place of dreams and possibilities. Surely, I could find a way to make this trip meaningful, to strengthen my bond with Jack and prepare for the journey of parenthood ahead. But as I dried my face with a soft, monogrammed towel, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. The tension between Jack and me, the constant presence of Eleanor, the unspoken words and lingering glances, it all added up to a sense of foreboding that I couldn't quite shake. Taking one last look in the mirror, I straightened my shoulders and took a deep breath. "You can do this," I told my reflection. "For yourself, for Jack, for the baby. You can make this work." With renewed determination, I unlocked the bathroom door and stepped back into the suite. Jack and Eleanor were still deep in conversation, poring over a map of the city spread out on the coffee table. I cleared my throat, drawing their attention. "So," I said, forcing a smile, "where are we going for dinner?" As we made our way down to the restaurant, arm in arm with Jack, I tried to focus on the positives. We were in one of the most exciting cities in the world, about to enjoy a meal at a renowned restaurant. But even as we were seated at our table, with its crisp white linens and sparkling silverware, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the calm before a storm. The waiter approached, a practiced smile on his face as he handed us our menus. "Good evening," he said smoothly. "Can I start you off with some drinks?" As Eleanor launched into a detailed inquiry about the wine list, I caught Jack's eye across the table. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the connection we once had, a shared look of amusement at his mother's antics. But then it was gone, replaced by a guarded expression that I'd been seeing more and more lately. I turned my attention to the menu, the words blurring before my eyes as my mind raced. How had we gotten here? When had the easy companionship Jack and I once shared been replaced by this uneasy tension? And more importantly, how could we find our way back to each other? As the evening wore on, filled with forced small talk and Eleanor's domineering presence, I felt the weight of unspoken words pressing down on me. The exquisite food, a parade of culinary delights that would normally have thrilled me, tasted like ash in my mouth. By the time we returned to our suite, I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. As Eleanor bid us goodnight and retreated to her room, I found myself standing once again at the window, gazing out at the twinkling lights of the city. Jack's reflection appeared beside mine in the glass. "Sarah," he said softly, "are you okay?" I turned to face him, searching his eyes for some sign of the man I'd married. "I don't know, Jack," I replied honestly. "Are we okay?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with the weight of all we'd left unsaid. Jack opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it again, uncertainty etched across his features. In that moment, as we stood in silence in our luxurious hotel suite, the bustling city below us oblivious to our inner turmoil, I realized that this trip might be more than just a family vacation. It could be a turning point in our relationship, for better or for worse. As I crawled into bed that night, my hand resting protectively over my growing belly, I couldn't help but wonder what the coming days would bring. The tension simmering beneath the surface threatened to boil over at any moment, and I knew that sooner or later, we would have to confront the issues we'd been avoiding. With a heavy sigh, I closed my eyes, willing sleep to come. Tomorrow was another day, another chance to bridge the gap that had formed between Jack and me, another opportunity to assert myself in the face of Eleanor's overwhelming presence. As I drifted off, the last thing I saw was the glittering skyline of New York, a silent witness to the drama unfolding in room 2005 of the Elysian Hotel. The morning light filtered through the sheer curtains of our hotel room, casting a soft glow over the luxurious furnishings. I stirred, my hand instinctively moving to my swollen belly. For a moment, I forgot where I was, lost in the hazy realm between sleep and wakefulness. Then reality crashed over me like a cold wave, and I remembered. We were in New York, on what was supposed to be our last hurrah before becoming parents, but had somehow morphed into a tense family ordeal. I turned to Jack's side of the bed, only to find it empty and cold. Frowning, I pushed myself up, my back protesting slightly at the movement. "Jack!" I called out, my voice echoing in the quiet room. No answer. Slipping out of bed, I padded across the plush carpet to the living area of our suite. The sight that greeted me made my heart sink. Jack and Eleanor were huddled together on the sofa, their heads close as they whispered intently. They looked up as I entered, and the sudden silence was deafening. "Good morning," I said, trying to keep my voice light despite the knot forming in my stomach. "What's going on?" Jack stood up abruptly, his face a mask of discomfort. "Sarah, we need to talk." Those 5 words sent a chill down my spine. I'd heard them before, in movies and TV shows, always preceding some earth-shattering revelation. I steeled myself, one hand resting protectively over my belly. "Okay," I said slowly, moving to sit in the armchair across from them. "What is it?" Jack glanced at his mother, who gave him a small nod. He took a deep breath, then looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, cold, distant, almost cruel. "Sarah, I think it's best if you sleep on the couch from now on," he said, his voice devoid of any warmth or emotion. "My mother will be sharing the bedroom with me instead." The words hit me like a physical blow. I blinked, certain I must have misheard. "What?" "Jack, what are you talking about?" Eleanor chimed in, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "It's for the best, dear. In your condition, you need your rest, and we wouldn't want you to be uncomfortable." I felt as if I were drowning, struggling to make sense of what was happening. "My condition? I'm pregnant, not sick." "Jack, this is ridiculous. We came here to spend time together, to connect before the baby comes. How is separating us going to help?" Jack's expression remained impassive. "This isn't up for discussion, Sarah. It's been decided." Anger flared within me, hot and fierce. "Decided? By whom?" "Certainly not by me. I'm your wife, Jack. We're about to have a baby together. How can you treat me like this?" Eleanor stood up, smoothing down her designer blouse. Now, let's not get emotional. It's not good for the baby." Her tone was condescending, as if speaking to a child. "If you're not happy with the arrangements, well..." She paused, her eyes glinting with malice. "If you want, you can sleep outside too." I gasped, shock and hurt coursing through me. I looked to Jack, expecting, hoping, to see him defend me, to tell his mother that she'd gone too far. But he just stood there, silent and stone-faced. "Jack," I pleaded, my voice breaking. "Are you really going to let her speak to me like that? To treat me this way?" He avoided my gaze, staring at a point somewhere over my shoulder. "Mom's right, Sarah. You're being overly emotional. This is what's best for everyone." I felt as if the ground had disappeared from beneath my feet. This couldn't be happening. The man standing before me was a stranger, cold and unfeeling, nothing like the loving husband I thought I knew. "Best for everyone?" I repeated, my voice rising. "How's this best for me? For our baby? Jack, we came here to celebrate our family, to prepare for our future together. And now you're shutting me out, siding with your mother over your own wife and child." Eleanor made its sking sound, shaking her head. "Really, Sarah, all this fuss isn't necessary. We're simply trying to ensure everyone is comfortable. Surely you can understand that." I turned to her, anger overriding my shock. "Comfortable? How is isolating me, the pregnant woman, supposed to make anyone comfortable? This is cruel, and you know it." Jack finally spoke up, his voice hard. "That's enough, Sarah. The decision has been made. You'll sleep on the couch, and that's final." I stood up, my legs shaking but my resolve firm. "No, Jack, that's not final. I won't be pushed aside or treated like an inconvenience. I'm your wife, carrying your child. If anyone should be sleeping on the couch, it's you." Eleanor's face contorted with rage. "How do you speak to my son that way? After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By being difficult and ungrateful." I laughed bitterly. "Everything you've done for me? You mean like trying to control every aspect of our lives?" Like constantly undermining my relationship with Jack? Like treating me like an outsider in my own family? Jack stepped between us, his face thunderous. That's it, Sarah. You've gone too far. My mother is only trying to help, and you're acting like a spoiled child. The words stung, each one a sharp blow to my heart. I stumbled back, feeling as if the air had been sucked out of the room. This man, this cold, unfeeling person, couldn't be the same Jack I'd fallen in love with, the one who had held my hand and promised to love and cherish me always. I don't understand, I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. What happened to us, Jack? When did I become the enemy? For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of the old Jack in his eyes, a hint of warmth, of regret. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by that same cold detachment. Things change, Sarah, he said flatly. People change. Maybe it's time you accepted that. I felt something break inside me at those words. It was as if a chasm had opened up between us, wide and insurmountable. I looked from Jack to Eleanor, seeing the united front they presented, and realized with a sickening clarity that I was alone. Truly, utterly alone. My hand moved to my belly, feeling the soft flutter of movement within. No, not entirely alone. I still had my baby, this precious life that depended on me to be strong, to protect it. Drawing myself up to my full height, I met Jack's gaze squarely. You're right, Jack. Things do change. And I think it's time I made some changes of my own. With shaking hands, I grabbed my phone from the side table. Jack and Eleanor watched in silence as I scrolled through my contacts, finally landing on the name I was looking for. My finger hovered over the call button as I looked up at them one last time. This is your last chance, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Take back what you said. Treat me with the respect I deserve as your wife and the mother of your child. Or I swear, I will walk out that door and never look back. Eleanor scoffed. Don't be dramatic, Sarah. Where would you go? You have no one here. Jack nodded in agreement. Be reasonable, Sarah. You're in no condition to be on your own. Just accept the situation and stop making things difficult for everyone. Their dismissive attitudes were the final straw. With a sense of calm that surprised even me, I pressed the call button. As the phone began to ring, I saw a flicker of uncertainty cross Jack's face. What are you doing? He demanded. Who are you calling? I held up a hand, silencing him as the call connected. Hello? Tom? It's Sarah. I need your help. Tom, the hotel owner and my old friend, answered immediately, his voice warm and concerned. Sarah? What's wrong? Are you okay? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. No, Tom, I'm not okay. I'm in a situation here, and I need to get out. Can you help me? As I quickly explained the situation to Tom, I watched the color drain from Jack's face. Eleanor's expression morphed from smug superiority to growing alarm. They had underestimated me, assumed I would simply roll over and accept their cruel ultimatum. They had forgotten that I had my own strength, my own resources. Tom's voice came through the phone, firm and reassuring. Stay right there, Sarah. I'm on my way up. Don't worry, we'll sort this out. As I ended the call, Jack stepped forward, his hand outstretched. Sarah, wait. Let's talk about this. There's no need to involve outsiders in our family matters. I stepped back, keeping out of his reach. Family matters? You lost the right to call this a family matter when you chose to side with your mother over your wife and unborn child. You lost the right to my consideration when you tried to relegate me to the couch like an unwanted houseguest. Eleanor's face had turned an alarming shade of red. You ungrateful little, she began, but I cut her off. No, Eleanor. I've had enough of your manipulation and your cruelty. This ends now. A knock at the door silenced any further argument. I moved to answer it, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. As I opened the door to reveal Tom's concerned face, I felt a surge of relief and gratitude. Sarah, he said softly, taking in my tear-stained face and trembling hands. Are you all right? I shook my head, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Tom's expression hardened as he looked past me to where Jack and Eleanor stood, frozen in shock. What's going on here? Tom demanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being in charge. Jack, care to explain why your pregnant wife looks like she's been through hell? Jack stammered, clearly unprepared for this turn of events. This is a private family matter. You have no right to interfere. Tom's eyes flashed dangerously. When it involves the well-being of my guests, especially a dear friend, it becomes my business. Now, someone better start explaining, or I'll have security up here so fast your heads will spin. As the confrontation unfolded, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. Whatever happened next, I knew I had made the right choice. I had stood up for myself, for my baby, and refused to be bullied or manipulated any longer. The New York skyline stretched out beyond the windows, a reminder of the vast world beyond this hotel room. A world full of possibilities, of second chances, of new beginnings. As Tom placed a protective arm around my shoulders, I realized that this moment, painful as it was, might just be the first step towards a brighter, stronger future. Tom's arrival shattered the tense atmosphere in the hotel suite. His imposing presence seemed to fill the room, commanding attention and respect. I watched as Jack and Eleanor exchanged nervous glances, their united front crumbling in the face of this unexpected intervention. "Now," Tom said, his voice calm but firm, "I want to hear exactly what's been going on here. Sarah, why don't you start?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Tom, Jack and his mother have decided that I should sleep on the couch for the remainder of our stay. They claim it's for my comfort, but it feels more like I'm being pushed aside, treated like an inconvenience." Tom's eyebrows shot up, his gaze shifting to Jack. "Is this true?" Jack shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. It's not like that. We were just trying to make sure everyone was comfortable." "Sarah's pregnancy. Don't you dare use my pregnancy as an excuse," I interrupted, anger flaring. "This isn't about my comfort. This is about control." Eleanor stepped forward, her face a mask of indignation. "Now see here, young man. This is a private family matter. You have no right to interfere." Tom's expression hardened. "Mrs. Thompson, when one of my guests, especially a pregnant woman, is being mistreated in my hotel, it becomes my business. Now, I suggest you all take a seat. We're going to sort this out." As we arranged ourselves around the suite's living area, I couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude towards Tom. His steady presence was like a lifeline in the stormy sea of emotions I'd been drowning in. Tom turned to me, his eyes softening. "Sarah, can you tell me more about what led to this situation?" I nodded, taking a moment to gather my thoughts. This trip was supposed to be a chance for Jack and me to connect before the baby comes. But from the moment we arrived, it's felt like I've been pushed to the sidelines. Jack and Eleanor make all the decisions, dismissing my input and desires. And now this ultimatum about sleeping arrangements. It feels like the final straw. Jack leaned forward, his face a mixture of frustration and guilt. "Sarah, you're blowing this out of proportion. We're just trying to make sure you're comfortable." The couch. Tom interjected, his tone incredulous. "You expect your pregnant wife to sleep on a couch while you share a room with your mother? In what world is that appropriate?" Eleanor bristled. "Now listen here. Jack is my son, and if I want to spend time with him, at the expense of his wife and unborn child." Tom cut in, his voice sharp. "Mrs. Thompson, with all due respect, your son is a married man about to become a father. His priority should be his wife and child, not catering to your whims." A heavy silence fell over the room. I watched as Jack's face cycled through a range of emotions: defensiveness, shame, confusion. For the first time since this ordeal began, I saw a glimmer of the man I'd married, the one who'd promised to stand by my side through thick and thin. Tom turned back to me, his expression softening. "Sarah, what do you want? What would make you feel respected and valued on this trip?" I took a moment to consider his question, feeling the weight of all eyes on me. "I want to be treated like an equal partner in this marriage. I want my opinions and feelings to be considered, not dismissed. And I want to sleep in the same bed as my husband, without feeling like I'm inconveniencing anyone by doing so." Tom nodded, then faced Jack. "And you, Jack? What do you have to say about all this?" Jack ran a hand through his hair, looking more lost and conflicted than I'd ever seen him. I don't know. I thought I was doing the right thing, trying to make everyone happy. But now, he trailed off, his eyes meeting mine. Sarah, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you or make you feel pushed aside. Intentions aren't enough, Jack, Tom said firmly. Your actions have consequences. You've hurt your wife deeply. How do you plan to make this right? As Jack struggled to formulate a response, Eleanor stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. We don't have to sit here and be lectured by a hotel manager. Jack, gather your things. We're leaving. Tom's voice cut through the room like a whip. Mrs. Thompson, sit down. Nobody is leaving until we resolve this situation. To my surprise, Eleanor sank back into her seat, cowed by Tom's authoritative tone. Now, Tom continued, here's what's going to happen. Jack, you and Sarah will remain in this. Sweet. Mrs. Thompson, I'll arrange a separate room for you on another floor. This will give Jack and Sarah the space they need to work through this issue. Eleanor opened her mouth to protest, but Tom held up a hand, silencing her. This is non-negotiable. Either you accept this arrangement, or you're welcome to find accommodations elsewhere. I watched in amazement as Eleanor's resistance crumbled. She nodded stiffly, her lips pressed into a thin line. Tom turned to Jack. As for you, young man, I suggest you take a long, hard look at your priorities. Your wife and child should come first. Always. Jack nodded, looking thoroughly chastened. I understand. Sarah, I'm so sorry. Can we talk? Really talk? I felt a mix of emotions, relief, lingering anger, a flicker of hope. Yes, Jack. I think we need to. Tom stood up, satisfaction evident in his bearing. Good. I'll have Mrs. Thompson's new room prepared immediately. And Sarah? He turned to me, his eyes warm. If you need anything at all, you call me, understand? I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. Thank you, Tom. I don't know how to repay you for this. He waved off my gratitude with a smile. No need. Just take care of yourself and that little one. And remember, you're stronger than you know. As Tom escorted a subdued Eleanor out of the suite, I found myself alone with Jack for the first time in what felt like ages. The silence between us was heavy, laden with unspoken words and suppressed emotions. Jack was the first to break it. Sarah, I don't even know where to begin. I've been such an idiot. I sighed, feeling the weight of the past few days pressing down on me. Yes, you have. But Jack, I need to understand. What happened? When did your mother's wishes become more important than our marriage, than our family? He slumped onto the couch, looking deflated. I don't know. It's like, ever since we announced the pregnancy, Mom's been so involved, so insistent on being part of everything. And I guess I just got caught up in trying to please everyone. I forgot the most important person I should be considering. Me, I said softly. And our baby. Jack nodded, his eyes filling with tears. I've been a terrible husband, haven't I? I promised to love and cherish you, and instead, I've been pushing you away, making you feel unloved and unwanted. I felt my own eyes welling up. It's hurt so much, Jack. Watching you side with your mother, feeling like an outsider in my own marriage. I've been so scared, wondering if this is what our future will be like. He reached out hesitantly, taking my hand in his. Sarah, I swear to you, it won't be. I've been blind, but Tom's right. You and our baby are my priority. You always should have been. I squeezed his hand, feeling a glimmer of hope. Words are easy, Jack. It's actions that matter. How can I trust that things will be different? Jack took a deep breath, his expression resolute. I'll prove it to you. Starting now, Mom will stay in her own room for the rest of the trip. We'll do the things we planned, just the two of us. And when we get home, I promise I'll set clear boundaries with her. No more letting her dictate our lives. I studied his face, searching for any sign of insincerity. All I saw was remorse and determination. Okay, I said slowly. I'm willing to give us, another chance. But Jack, you have to understand. One more incident like this, one more time you choose your mother over me and our child, and I'm done. I won't subject our baby to a life of being second best. Jack nodded solemnly. I understand, and I promise it won't happen again. I love you, Sarah. You and our baby mean everything to me. I'm so sorry I lost sight of that. As we sat there, hands intertwined, I felt a tentative sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still wounds to heal, trust to rebuild. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt hope. A knock at the door startled us both. Jack went to answer it, revealing Tom standing in the hallway. Everything's been arranged, he said, his eyes moving between Jack and me. Mrs. Thompson is settled in her new room. How are things here? I offered him a small smile. We're talking. It's a start. Tom nodded approvingly. Good. Remember, both of you, communication is key. Don't let things fester. And Sarah? His gaze locked with mine. Remember what I said. You're strong. Don't ever let anyone make you feel otherwise. As Tom bid us goodnight and closed the door, I felt a renewed sense of strength course through me. This ordeal had shown me sides of myself I never knew existed, a resilience, a determination to stand up for myself and my child. Jack returned to the couch, sitting close but not touching me. So, he said softly, where do we go from here? I took a deep breath, considering the question. We start over. We remember why we fell in love, why we decided to create a family together. And we really work, on building the kind of relationship, the kind of life we want for ourselves and our child. Jack nodded, a look of determination settling on his face. I'm ready. Whatever it takes, Sarah. I won't let you down again. As we talked into the night, laying bare our fears, our hopes, our dreams for the future, I felt the first stirrings of true reconciliation. The road ahead would be challenging, but with renewed commitment and the unexpected support of a true friend, I felt ready to face whatever came our way. The New York skyline twinkled beyond our window, a reminder of the vast world of possibilities that lay before us. As I drifted off to sleep that night, curled against Jack's familiar warmth, I sent a silent thank you to Tom, the unexpected ally who had helped us find our way back to each other. The next morning, I awoke to the gentle caress of sunlight streaming through the hotel room's curtains. For a moment, I basked in the warmth, allowing myself to forget the tumultuous events of the previous day. But reality soon came rushing back as I felt Jack stir beside me. Good morning, he murmured, his voice thick with sleep. How are you feeling? I took a moment to assess my emotions. Better, I replied cautiously. But we still have a lot to work through. Jack nodded, his expression serious. I know, and I'm ready to do whatever it takes. As we prepared for the day ahead, there was a palpable tension in the air. We were both acutely aware that this was just the beginning of our journey to rebuild trust and strengthen our relationship. A knock at the door interrupted our quiet morning routine. Jack answered it, revealing Tom standing in the hallway, his face a mask of professional concern. Good morning, Tom said, his eyes darting between us. I hope I'm not interrupting, but I wanted to check in and see how things are going. I offered him a small smile. We're working on it. Thank you again for everything you did yesterday. Tom nodded, his expression softening. I'm glad to hear it. Listen, I've arranged for a private breakfast for you both in one of our smaller dining rooms. I thought you might appreciate some privacy to continue your discussions. Jack and I exchanged a glance. The gesture was thoughtful, but we both knew that sooner or later, we'd have to face Eleanor. That's very kind of you, Tom, Jack said, but I think we need to address this situation head-on. Is my mother awake? Tom's eyebrows rose slightly. Yes, she is. She's been quite vocal this morning about her dissatisfaction with the new arrangements. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Despite the progress Jack and I had made, the thought of confronting Eleanor filled me with dread. Jack must have sensed my unease because he reached out and took my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. We'll face her together, he said softly. Tom studied us for a moment before nodding. All right, if you're sure, I can arrange for a meeting in the hotel's private lounge. Neutral ground, so to speak. We agreed, and Tom left to make the arrangements. As we finished getting ready, I couldn't shake the feeling that this confrontation would be a defining moment in our relationship. An hour later, we found ourselves in the hotel's elegant private lounge. The room was tastefully decorated with plush armchairs, soft lighting, and large windows offering a breathtaking view of the New York skyline. Under different circumstances, it would have been a relaxing space. Eleanor was already there when we arrived, pacing back and forth like a caged tiger. She whirled to face us as we entered, her eyes flashing with anger. "Well," she spat, "I hope you're both satisfied." Banishing me to another room, treating me like some sort of pariah. "Is this how you repay everything I've done for you?" I felt Jack tense beside me, but to my surprise and relief, he didn't back down. "Mom," he said, his voice firm, "we need to talk about boundaries." Eleanor's eyes widened in disbelief. "Boundaries?" "I'm your mother, Jack. There are no boundaries between a mother and her son." "That's where you're wrong," I interjected, finding my voice. "Jack is a grown man, about to become a father himself. Our family, Jack, me, and our baby needs to come first." Eleanor turned her glare on me. "You," she hissed. "This is all you're doing, isn't it? Turning my son against me, manipulating him with your pregnancy." I felt a surge of anger, but before I could respond, Jack stepped forward. "Stop it, Mom. Sarah isn't manipulating anyone. If anything, I'm the one who's been blind to how my actions have been hurting her, hurting us." The shock on Eleanor's face would have been comical if the situation wasn't so serious. She stumbled back, sinking into one of the armchairs. "Jack, darling, you don't mean that. We've always been so close. You can't let her come between us." Jack shook his head, his expression a mixture of sadness and determination. "Mom, you're the one who's been coming between us. I love you, but Sarah is my wife, and we're about to have a baby. They have to be my priority now." I watched as Eleanor's face crumpled, tears welling up in her eyes. For a moment, I felt a twinge of sympathy. Despite everything, she was a mother who feared losing her son. "Mrs. Thompson," I said, softening my tone, "we're not trying to cut you out of our lives. We want you to be a part of our family, to be a grandmother to our child. But we need you to respect our marriage and our decisions." Eleanor looked up at me, her expression guarded. "And what does that mean, exactly?" Jack took a deep breath. "It means no more surprise visits or inviting yourself on our trips. It means respecting our privacy and our time together. And most importantly, it means treating Sarah with the respect she deserves as my wife and the mother of your grandchild." The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor's gaze darted between Jack and me, as if searching for any sign of weakness or hesitation. Finding none, she seemed to deflate. I never meant to cause problems," she said quietly. "I just wanted to be involved, to be close to you both." "We understand that," I replied, "but there are better ways to do it. Ways that don't make me feel like an outsider in my own marriage." Jack nodded in agreement. "Mom, we want you in our lives, but on terms that work for all of us. Can you try to understand that?" Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, her fingers twisting in her lap. Finally, she looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. "I suppose I have been a bit overbearing. It's just, you're my only child, Jack. The thought of losing you." "You're not losing me, Mom," Jack said gently. "But our relationship needs to change. I'm not just your son anymore. I'm a husband, and soon I'll be a father. I need you to respect that." I watched as Eleanor nodded slowly, the fight seeming to drain out of her. "I'll try," she said softly. "It won't be easy, but I'll try." As the tension in the room began to dissipate, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. This confrontation, necessary as it was, had taken a toll on all of us. "Why don't we take a break?" I suggested. "Maybe we could meet for dinner later, start fresh?" Jack and Eleanor both agreed, and as we prepared to leave the lounge, I caught sight of Tom hovering discreetly near the door. He gave me a subtle nod of approval, and I felt a surge of gratitude for his silent support. As we made our way back to our room, Jack pulled me close. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. "Of us. We did it." I leaned into him, feeling a glimmer of hope for our future. "We did," I agreed. "But this is just the beginning. Over the next few days, we worked on rebuilding our relationships. Eleanor made visible efforts to respect our boundaries, even if she sometimes struggled. We explored New York together, creating new memories and slowly healing the wounds of the past. On our last night in the city, as we stood on the observation deck of the Empire State Building, Jack wrapped his arms around me from behind, his hands resting gently on my swollen belly. "Thank you," he murmured into my ear. "For what?" I asked, leaning back into his embrace. "For not giving up on us. For being strong enough to fight for our family." I turned in his arms, looking up into his eyes. "We fought for it together," I said softly. "And we'll keep fighting. Every day to make our family strong and happy." As we gazed out at the twinkling lights of the city below, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The journey hadn't been easy, and I knew there would be more challenges ahead. But we had faced this one together and come out stronger for it. In that moment, with the New York skyline spread out before us and the promise of our future nestled safely between us, I knew that we could face anything life threw our way. We had found our strength, not just as individuals, but as a family. As we left the Empire State Building that night, hand in hand with Eleanor following close behind, I realized that this trip, which had started as a nightmare, had transformed into something beautiful. It had been a crucible, testing our love, our commitment, and our resilience. And we had emerged from it stronger, more united, and ready to face the adventures of parenthood that lay ahead. The next morning, as we checked out of the hotel, Tom was there to see us off. He pulled me aside for a moment, his eyes twinkling with warmth. "You did good, kid," he said softly. "Remember this feeling. Remember your strength. It'll serve you well in the years to come." I hugged him tightly, whispering my thanks for his unwavering support. As we drove away from the hotel, I caught one last glimpse of Tom in the rearview mirror, standing tall and proud, a silent guardian who had helped us find our way back to each other. The New York skyline receded behind us as we headed home, but the lessons we had learned, the strength we had found, and the love we had rekindled traveled with us. This trip, which had begun as our craziest family adventure, had indeed lived up to its name. But it had also become something more, a turning point, a new beginning, and a testament to the power of love, understanding, and the unbreakable bonds of family. As we crossed the city limits, I placed a hand on my belly, feeling the gentle movements of our child within. "We're ready for you now, little one," I whispered. "We're ready for whatever adventures come our way." And with that, we drove on towards home, towards our future, stronger and more united than ever before. The journey back to Boston was a stark contrast to our arrival in New York. As Jack navigated the familiar highways, a comfortable silence filled the car. Eleanor had opted to take a later flight, giving us space to process the events of the past week. I gazed out the window, watching the landscape change from urban sprawl to rolling countryside, my mind replaying the tumultuous experiences we'd endured. As we crossed the Massachusetts state line, Jack reached over and squeezed my hand. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked softly. I turned to him, a small smile playing on my lips. "Just thinking about how different things feel now compared to when we left for this trip." Jack nodded, his eyes briefly leaving the road to meet mine. "It's been quite the roller coaster, hasn't it?" "That's an understatement," I chuckled, my free hand absently stroking my swollen belly. Our baby, as if sensing the shift in mood, gave a gentle kick. As we pulled into our driveway, the familiar sight of our modest suburban home brought a wave of emotion. This was our sanctuary, the place where we'd build our future together. Yet, as we stepped through the front door, the air felt different, charged with the lingering energy of our New York confrontation and the promise of change. Jack set our bags down in the hallway and turned to me, his expression serious. "Sarah, I think we need to talk more about what happened. About where we go from here." I nodded, feeling a mix of exhaustion and determination. "You're right. Let's get comfortable first." We settled on our worn leather couch, the same one where we'd first discussed the idea of this trip. It felt like a lifetime ago. Jack took my hands in his thumbs tracing gentle circles on my skin. "I want you to know," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "that I'm committed to making things right. What happened in New York, It opened my eyes to how I've been neglecting our relationship, how I've been letting my mother's influence come between us. I squeezed his hands, encouraging him to continue. I've been thinking a lot about why I let things get so out of hand, Jack continued. I think part of me was scared. Scared of the responsibility of becoming a father, scared of disappointing my mother, scared of not living up to everyone's expectations. But in trying to please everyone, I ended up hurting the person who matters most to me. Tears welled up in my eyes as I listened to Jack's confession. "Oh, Jack," I whispered, "I had no idea you were feeling that way. Why didn't you talk to me about it?" He shook his head, looking ashamed. "I don't know. I guess I thought I had to be strong, to have it all figured out. But I realize now that true strength is being able to lean on each other, to face our fears together." I leaned forward, resting my forehead against his. "We're in this together, Jack. Always. Your fears, your doubts. I want to know about them. We're partners, remember?" Jack nodded, a tear escaping down his cheek. "I promise, from now on, I'll be more open with you. No more shutting you out, no more letting anyone come between us." As we sat there, holding each other, I felt a sense of healing begin to take root. The wounds inflicted by the events in New York were still raw, but I could feel them starting to mend. Over the next few weeks, we worked diligently on rebuilding our relationship. We set aside time each evening to talk openly about our day, our feelings, and our hopes for the future. Jack was true to his word, sharing his anxieties about impending fatherhood and his struggles to balance his relationship with his mother and our growing family. We also focused on preparing for the baby's arrival, turning the spare room into a nursery. As we painted the walls a soft yellow and assembled the crib, our conversations naturally turned to our parenting styles and the kind of family we wanted to create. "I want our child to feel loved and supported," I said one afternoon as we folded tiny onesies. "But I also want them to be independent, to know it's okay to have their own thoughts and feelings." Jack nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I agree. And I want them to know that it's okay to make mistakes, that we'll love them no matter what." These conversations helped us align our vision for our family's future, strengthening our bond as we prepared for the biggest change of our lives. Dealing with Eleanor proved to be an ongoing challenge. True to her word, she made efforts to respect our boundaries, but old habits died hard. There were still moments of tension, like when she showed up unannounced one weekend with a car full of baby gifts, or when she called Jack in a panic because he hadn't returned her calls for 2 days. But each time, Jack stood firm, gently but firmly reinforcing the boundaries we'd established. I watched with pride as he navigated these difficult conversations, balancing his love for his mother with his commitment to our family. "Mom," he said during one particularly tense phone call, "I love you, and I appreciate your excitement about the baby. But Sarah and I need space to figure things out for ourselves. We'll call you with updates, I promise, but you need to trust us to make our own decisions." As my due date approached, we found ourselves reflecting more and more on the journey that had brought us to this point. One evening, as we sat on our back porch watching the sunset, Jack turned to me with a serious expression. "Sarah," he said, taking my hand, "I want you to know how grateful I am for you. For your strength, your patience, your love. What happened in New York, it was a wake-up call for me. I realized how close I came to losing everything that matters." I squeezed his hand, feeling a lump form in my throat. "It was a wake-up call for both of us, Jack. It showed us that we need to fight for our relationship, to never take each other for granted." He nodded, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "I promise you, here and now, that I will always put you and our child first. No matter what challenges we face, we'll face them together." As if on cue, our baby gave a strong kick, causing us both to laugh. I placed Jack's hand on my belly, watching his face light up as he felt the movement. "I think someone agrees with that plan," I said softly. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of final preparations and anticipation. We attended childbirth classes, put the finishing touches on the nursery, and had long discussions about our hopes and fears for parenthood. Through it all, I marveled at the change in Jack. He was more present, more engaged than ever before. He attended every doctor's appointment, asked thoughtful questions, and spent hours reading parenting books. The man who had once seemed unsure and easily swayed by his mother's influence had been replaced by a confident, devoted partner. The night before my due date, we lay in bed, unable to sleep due to excitement and nerves. Jack propped himself up on one elbow, gazing at me with a mixture of awe and adoration. "You know," he said softly, "I keep thinking about what Tom said to us back in New York. About how we're stronger than we know." I nodded, remembering the hotel owner's words of wisdom. He was right. We've come so far since then. Jack placed his hand on my belly, a gesture that had become so familiar and comforting over the past months. "We have. And it's all thanks to you, Sarah. Your strength, your willingness to fight for us, it changed everything." I covered his hand with mine, feeling the warmth of his skin and the gentle movements of our baby. "We did it together, Jack. And we'll keep doing it together, every step of the way." As we drifted off to sleep that night, I felt a profound sense of peace and readiness. Whatever challenges lay ahead, sleepless nights, diaper changes, the inevitable disagreements that come with parenting, I knew we were prepared to face them as a united front. The next morning, as the first contractions began, I felt a surge of excitement and nervousness. Jack was by my side in an instant, his face a mixture of concern and anticipation. "This is it," I breathed, gripping his hand as another contraction hit. Jack nodded, his voice steady and reassuring. "We've got this, Sarah. Together." As he helped me to the car, I couldn't help but think about how far we'd come. The trip that was meant to be our last hurrah before parenthood had turned into so much more, a crucible that had tested our love, our commitment, and our resilience. We had emerged stronger, more united, and more prepared for the journey ahead. Settling into the passenger seat, I took a deep breath, ready to embark on our greatest adventure yet. As Jack started the car, I caught his eye and smiled. "Let's go meet our baby," I said. With a squeeze of my hand and a look of pure love, Jack nodded. "Let's do this." As we drove towards the hospital, towards our future, I felt a sense of profound gratitude for the challenges we'd faced, for the strength we'd found, and for the love that had carried us through it all. Our family story was just beginning, and I couldn't wait to see what the next chapter would bring.